here we go. So, hi. My
Hello.
name's Lisa Collins, and I'm here with...
Justin Collins.
Who is my son. And we're starting a podcast. This is our first episode called Talking Dogs.
Hey.
Cue jazz hands. So, we're going to talk about different dog behavior issues, just things that have come up over the years. Actually, a little background. I have been a dog trainer for 17 years. And I just recently sort of retired, although I just scheduled a session with the clients.
Retired with an asterisk.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get sucked back in. So I thought I would focus my energies on getting the knowledge in my brain out to the people in whatever way I can. So we're doing some videos, so you can check out our YouTube channel at YouTube at Collins Canine.
YouTube.com/Collins Canine.
Yes,
right?
Thank you. That's
Clarification is key.
COLLINSCANINE. So we're doing a lot of videos, a little bit more on the training side, and I'm thinking for this podcast we'll do more discussion. I might recap some training sessions that I've had that I think a lot of people would be interested in, and maybe even pull in some people and do some actual training in the podcast. We'll see where this takes us.
Yeah.
Justin, what's your experience with dog training?
Well, I attend some of your classes on occasion, and I have helped a lot of dogs in the past who have fears of children. I help them get used to children and, to help them.
You might not know he is
fears.
a child.
Yeah, I am a child. I am...
Despite his manly voice.
Yes. No, I've gone to a lot of, what are they called?
Classes? Private sessions?
No, I guess private sessions, but, sort of fundraisers? I don't know how to... I forgot the word.
Yeah.
But, I help dogs a lot. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah. And we have a couple dogs.
We do. One is lying down right next to us.
You probably will hear him at some point because he's loud, even though he's little.
I think you'd hear Darcy.
Yeah.
Because Darcy barks at, if there's, a sway of wind.
Yeah.
She's, barking at the top of her lungs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Darcy is a 10-ish-year-old pit bull mix.
Actually, today is we got her exactly 8 years ago today.
Adopted, yep. Signed the papers.
Adoptiversary! Yay.
And then, who's this guy on the ground?
That's Archie. He is a 2-ish-year-old Shorky Bug, which is a Shih Tzu, Yorkie, Boston Terrier, and a Pug. So, yeah, he's a little crazy sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, he's in our videos, as is Darcy. So I guess.
So, what topic are we talking about today?
So I thought a good starter topic that I still do get questions about would be essentially why I use the methods that I do. There are a lot of different methods out there, and I guess a lot of people say, to each his own, and I think that is to a certain extent, but these methods are thoroughly researched. Universities and people who have PhDs and are much smarter than I am run tests on how animals, whether that's rats or dogs or humans, learn. And the conclusion over the years has been that animals respond much better to positive reinforcement, which a lot of people equate with treats or giving dogs food. Which
what is the other option that they test that a lot of people use?
Okay.
Yeah, just let
Yeah.
them know.
So
Yeah.
there's actually, and this is where I get a little bit of kind of nerd speak that may be really tough to understand. But let me explain just very briefly what positive reinforcement is. So positive just means giving something. It does not mean good or bad. The reinforcement is where we talk about the good or bad. So positive reinforcement means giving something good.
Yeah.
And what we're looking for is that it causes the behavior to increase. So we give something good to cause the behavior that is happening to increase.
Like, for example, for positive reinforcement, like, if you're training a dog to, like, sit or stay or lie down or something, and they do what you have told them to do, you give them a treat, and that's positive.
Or you give them reinforcement.
Yeah, just a positive
Yeah, absolutely. So, sort of there's actually 4 different options. So positive reinforcement is one. What's actually called positive punishment is, I don't know, I guess sort of the opposite.
Yeah.
So again, positive just means giving, doesn't mean good or bad, so that's where this gets confusing. Punishment is something that deters a dog from doing something. So something the dog deems bad. We think of a lot of things like hitting, kicking, yelling at the dog. But there are a lot of other bad things, things that dogs think are bad that we don't think about it. And I see every day. I actually just had a client since I retired who sent me, they were looking for another trainer, and they sent me a link or a information on another trainer that they were looking into. And I just quickly went to his website and looked at the first video. And it was this guy, for whatever reason, walking out of a house into a backyard with a dog on leash. And he kept, I don't know what, I wasn't listening to the sound. I don't know if he was asking
what leash was it?
It was a regular collar and leash. But oh no, actually, it was on a prong collar, I forgot. But anyway.
Chokes the dog if you don't know.
Pokes them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But he wasn't using it. He wasn't tightening it up. But he was, for example, asking the dog to sit, and then he'd reach down and pet the dog on the head. And every time he did that, the dog would scrunch down a little bit, close its eyes, did a lot of what we call calming signals, which are a really fascinating way of dogs communicating.
Is it positive or negative?
It's a way of communicating. Okay. Yeah. So calming signals are just things that dogs do to, well, there's a variety of different reasons. They often do them when they are uncomfortable with a situation. That's the best, especially for this use of discussion. So the dog was licking its lips, was squinting its eyes, was averting its gaze, was looking away from the guy. So what we would think of petting the dog as something good, this dog didn't like. Whether it was the dog didn't like petting at all, the dog didn't like petting on its head, the dog didn't like the guy petting him. So this guy was using petting as positive reinforcement, but it was actually a punishment. The dog did not like it. So eventually the dog will probably stop responding because he knows he gets something he doesn't like when he does certain things. So that whole little story there was to show that sometimes things that we think are reinforcements are actually punishments. So punishments aren't always just hitting the dog, kicking the dog, jerking the dog around on leash, or shocking the dog. Everybody has different likes and dislikes, and every dog has different likes and dislikes. So anyway, so positive punishment is just simply introducing something the dog doesn't like, something bad to the dog, in order to decrease the likelihood of whatever behavior the dog was performing. So the other two are less used in training. The other two parts of what we call the quadrant of learning. Besides positive reinforcement and positive punishment, there's also negative reinforcement and negative punishment. So negative, as we all know, is the opposite of positive. But negative in this situation just means taking something away. So we're either taking something good or taking something bad away. I do use these techniques with dogs frequently. Usually the negative punishment, I know that sounds bad, but again, remember, punishment is just something to decrease the likelihood of the behavior. But I'm not going to get too much into those two aspects of training because they aren't used as they aren't as commonly used. Thank you. And most people either, what I want this podcast to hopefully change people's opinions is why not to use positive punishment and why to use positive reinforcement, and also how to be creative with your positive reinforcement, because a lot of people just go, well, I don't want to give my dog a cookie, or my dog doesn't like food very much, or my dog's overweight. But there's a lot of other things you can use for positive reinforcement. So I want to talk about those things, and we'll skip the negative reinforcement, negative punishment. If down the road we get some fantastic training nerds that want to talk about that, I would be more than happy, because there are a lot of cool things you can do, especially with negative punishment. But we'll just talk about positive reinforcement. So I've found as with human training, back in the olden days, we trained, or as we think of it, taught humans, our kids, focusing more on positive punishment. So you're going to get a spanking, you're going to get your knuckles wrapped with a ruler in school. If you don't do well, you're going to have to sit in the corner. So everything, or the vast majority of teaching kids, and this also carried over to any animal that needed training, dogs, circus animals, any animal that needed training, was focused on positive punishment. So we hit them, we kicked them, we jerked them around on leash. What really made the change was a lot of training done with marine mammals, since it's really hard to kick a whale, put a leash on a dolphin and jerk them around. People really started getting creative with how they interacted with these animals, and in turn found that the animals' responses were much better, and they also had fewer side effects than the positive punishment. So there was a lot of research and a lot of, particularly dog trainers, we kind of, I think, got interested in it pretty quickly in using positive reinforcement, because a lot of us had bad experiences, just didn't feel like it was something that was right to do to these animals. So there was a lot of research that started to be done on how quickly the animals learned behaviors, whether they were given positive reinforcement, given a cookie, praise, access to go outside, petting, whatever it was, or positive punishment, shock, jerk of the leash, smack on the head. So over the years, there's been lots of research that has shown that positive reinforcement is the optimal training technique, responses are much better. And more importantly to me is that there's fewer side effects.
Yeah.
There's our timing tends to be horrible. Dog trainers are a little better than the average dog owner, but that's just because we do this stuff over and over and over again. But even dog trainers, in the timing, when a dog does something we don't want them to do, to give that positive punishment, to give that thing that the dog doesn't like, is sometimes impossible. I mean, I've seen, this is probably one of them that I see a lot, is dog runs away or dog runs off and the owner's screaming, "Dog, come! Dog, come!" And the dog's running around and having a good old time. And then when the dog finally comes back to the owner, which is what the owner wanted, they wanted the dog to come, they punish the dog. They yell at the dog, they reprimand the dog. So the timing is completely off. The punishment is completely separate from the behavior. The dog got yelled at well after he did the thing that the owner didn't want to do. So the dog doesn't really understand anything. Dogs don't have the same kind of memories that we do. They are not furry humans. Their brains are not developed in the same manner that ours are.
Yeah.
So they don't really understand, oh, it was the thing I did before that she's mad about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they think that, like, what they're doing at that moment is what they're, so just, like, whatever, just standing there or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Or coming to the owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if they think they're being reprimanded for going to the owner, that'll make them not want to go to the owner anymore. So, which is not what you're trying to do. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. So, working in that situation, working to teach a dog to come to you when they aren't out running in the middle of the busy street, so that they know good things happen to them when they come to you, is going to make that behavior a lot more reliable. And since you weren't able to do anything when the dog was actually performing the behavior you didn't want, there's really nothing you can do. And it's a lot of human embarrassment. I can definitely tell when we live in Chicago, and I was walking down the street, down Diversey, which is a very busy street, and a guy, I don't even remember how, I think the dog slipped his leash and was running in and out of traffic in the middle of Diversey.
Which is, if you don't know, is one of the most busy streets.
Yeah, it's a real busy street.
Chicago.
Yeah.
You would not want to run in the middle of it.
They stopped traffic and people were getting the dog stopped traffic and people were getting very mad.
Yeah.
And I could tell the guy was embarrassed because people were honking their horns and they were yelling. So part of his reaction when he got his dog back was social pressure. I recognized that my dog did something bad and all these people are staring at me, so I'm embarrassed and I need to show that I didn't like what my dog was doing. But it really did nothing to train the dog and did nothing about the situation, and in fact, in all likelihood, will make the dog take longer to come back to the owner because he's scared of him. And as a side note, I was actually the one that got the dog back and grabbed the dog because the owner was screaming his head off, and I didn't really want to be near the owner either. He was kind of scaring me too. So, as my mom always said, you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So even if you're I said my mom said it.
I have no clue what that means.
Yeah, it means that you're going to get things, it's usually about people, but in this case it's about dogs, to do things for you by being sweet like honey,
Yes.
as opposed to being sour like vinegar.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I understand.
Yeah, there you go. Now you understand.
Yay, tangents.
Yeah, exactly. Super fun. So I see it on a daily basis, just even walking down the street, of dogs responding less reliably when the owner is yelling at them or upset with them, or seems to be someone that frequently gets upset with their dog as opposed to someone that has a good relationship with their dog. So in a nutshell, that's kind of why I focus. There's the scientific aspect, that science has proven that this works better. And I am a lot more of an analytical person than a creative person, so I am not going to deny what scientists have proven. They also, when you look around, there really aren't a lot of people who are professional or people who are educated in this business, people who have PhDs in behavior and all biology and everything else. There aren't a lot, if there are any. I think one time I found one guy that was a PhD that was in support of positive punishment.
That's one out of the...
I mean, thousands. Yeah.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to me, when you can't find one or many educated professionals that specialize in an area that support it, that speaks volumes. The vast majority of people that do positive punishment focused training, their reason for doing it is, this is how I did it for 30 years. This is how my dad did it when he was a kid, which, from my understanding, I'm going to go on a little bit of a little tiny tangent.
That's fine.
I can't watch The Dog Whisperer. I can't watch Cesar Millan. I've tried it a few times, and it makes me so crazy because what he says is so wrong and so detrimental to the dog-human relationship. But from my understanding, my little understanding of where he came from and why he does what he does, is something about his father doing it that way or something. And the same thing. He's always done it that way. And to me, that reasoning does not apply in any other profession. Like, why would you want to go to a doctor that is only using the same techniques he's used for the last 30 years? Or I use the same techniques to cure whatever illness.
Yeah, polio.
That my grandfather did, or something negative, the same techniques. Like, that is, dog training has been the only thing that we're staying the same is a positive thing. Most other industries and professions, you're always looking for the new way to do stuff and the best way to do stuff. So I've never understood that, like, well, I've done it for 30 years. I don't think there's anything that people still do the same way they do 30 years ago. Yeah. And it's still the best.
Would you, technology 30 years ago could not compete in the smallest to the technology of today. So why would you go, I use this 1985 Commodore computer, and it's the top of the line. I still use it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Like, why? Yeah. There are now amazing. Apparently, there's now much more advanced technologies that is much better, but yeah. And people use that, but people still use the dog training
Mm-hmm.
techniques from 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
which does not make sense.
Yeah. So science supports it.
Yeah.
I also get a lot of people who say, well, I trained my dog this way 30 years ago. It was the best dog ever. And I don't get that because that's one dog.
Yeah, one dog out of the millions.
Yeah, and places like universities and research facilities, they, without being, not talking about science crazy experiments, but they experiment on how animals learn using thousands of dogs. So why is your experience with one dog outweigh what science has proven with thousands, tens of thousands of dogs?
And like using positive punishment with one dog might have worked, but using positive reinforcement would have probably worked even better.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes, very
with
true.
Training the dog.
Yeah.
So while it may have gotten the job done,
mm-hmm.
it would have been much more like beneficial to the dog
mm-hmm.
to have done positive reinforcement instead of positive punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Or
yeah, absolutely. So, and there's been lots of I can never remember the way the letters go. American Veterinary Medical Association has issued statements on the benefits of positive reinforcement over positive punishments. There's just been lots of very educated groups of people that have supported this. So it's why I do what I do, in addition to the science, in addition to my experience. I have trained dogs using positive punishment. Before I became a trainer, I went to a trainer that my vet had recommended, and it was all prong collars and leash corrections. And I had 2 dogs at the time that were as different in personality as they could be. And the one was okay with it. But the other one would just screech in pain when I would jerk the leash, what's called a leash correction. And I would literally leave there every day crying because the trainer was mean too. I know humans have a huge amount of responsibility and impact on the dog training, and I do always, not to clients' faces, but I will say it's the dogs are easy, it's the humans, training the humans that are hard. But this woman she definitely carried over her positive punishment into the training of people. So I left every session crying and felt horrible. And I never why would you want to go someplace that's going to make you feel awful or cry or, worse? So all signs point to positive reinforcement, which is why I've done this for the last 17 years. I've dealt with as severe of aggression as you can get. I've never had the need to use anything like a choke or a prong collar or a shock collar or physically harming the dog. So I just don't see the use of it.
Yeah.
And that is why I train using positive reinforcement and basically never positive punishment.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to note is that a lot of people say they use positive reinforcement when they use prong and choke and shock collars. Again, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, positive reinforcement can just be telling a dog, good dog. Yeah. So just because a trainer says they use positive reinforcement doesn't mean they aren't going to shock your dog. Also, on the flip side, I see, especially on people's websites, trainers' websites, that they say they use 100% positive reinforcement. That is completely impossible to do. You can't interact with a creature always giving them good stuff because they're not going to always be performing behaviors that you want. Yeah. But that gets into that negative reinforcement and negative punishment, which is kind of complicated to get into. And we can do that at some point, but we won't do it right now. But so just when you're looking for a trainer, some red flags, if they say they're 100% positive reinforcement, they don't know what positive reinforcement means then. So you probably shouldn't work with them. Anyone that outwardly says they use positive punishment, which honestly I've never seen, which, you know, if you support what you do as a trainer, why wouldn't you admit what you do? Which I do find a lot of these positive punishment trainers, they won't tell you what they do, but when they get your dog and work with their dog one-on-one, that's what they're doing. So if you really agree with what you're doing and you think it's the optimal and best training techniques, then why are you embarrassed to tell people that you do it?
Yeah.
Slap it all over your website and say, I'm going to put a shock collar on your dog because I think that's the best. So there's got to be something going on there that they really, somewhere deep down, recognize that what they're doing is not a good thing. Yes, exactly wrong. So, do you have any questions, Justin Collins?
I think you answered all of them.
Yeah.
I think you answered all of them.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So we have, like I said, we have videos on YouTube that you can view and subscribe and like and comment. Is that all of them?
Yeah. You're a true YouTuber.
Yay! So feel free to ask any questions. We also, I think that this podcast will also be looking to you, the listener, for any questions you have, for ideas. I have a lot of ideas in my head of things that I want to talk about.
If you want to comment on this video.
Yeah. You can send us an email at Lisa, Lisa, at collinscanine.com. COLLINSCANINE.com.
Yep. Yeah, just pop us an email.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to answer it. Oh, we will.
We will answer it.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get thousands of questions after.
Who knows?
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Yeah.
And look for more.
Yep. That was Talking Dogs with Justin Collins and Lisa Collins.
See ya.
Bye.